Brandon is like the smartest business mind I think that we know. I don't know how you can understand every facet of somebody's business.
I had to really understand the Rubik's Cube. There's so many colors to business. How do I organize it? How do I flip it? And how do I make it all cohesive? So my whole life, I had the Jewish grandmother that's like, you're gonna be a doctor or a lawyer. And I had the parents that were like, you're gonna be an entrepreneur, you're gonna be a business owner. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna do performing arts. Graduate from college. I'm like, I don't wanna live the life of a director. Hollywood would eat me alive. So literally I went to work, faked it till I made it. When people ask me, what was the most successful thing that contributed to your business acumen? It was actually learning how to direct theater.
Welcome back to this episode of Behind the Success. Today we are joined by Brandon Seigel. He is the president of Wellness Works Medical Billing, Wellness Works Management Partners, the host of the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast, and the founder of Growth Code Conference. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to pick your brain.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here. It's a lot of fun.
A little bit more backstory is Brandon is like the smartest business mind I think that we know. He can take things that apply to every single business that feel daunting, right? Like, don't talk to me about compliance. Not that we really have that much of that. HR, oh my gosh. But even when it comes down to employee management and how to do bonuses and how to hire properly and all the things to avoid and all the things that you should do to incentivize your team, he can cover all that stuff. I don't know how you can understand every facet of somebody's business as well as you do, but that's kind of what we have to dig out of you, because were you just born this way, or how did you grow up and get into these experiences where you can now transform somebody's business?
So it's funny that you say that, because so my whole life I literally had parents that were like, you were born to do business. And I said, no, I don't want to be a business. And I had the Jewish grandmother that's like, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I had the parents that were like, you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to be a business owner. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do performing arts. That's what I said. I literally was like, I'm going to direct theater. That is what I want to do. And I literally, in my undergrad, was directing theater. And my whole life, my parents were like, you're going to be a business owner, you're going to be a business owner. Graduate from college. And I'm like, I don't want to live the life of a director. And I don't want to do film. Hollywood would eat me alive. So literally I went to work, and I kind of like faked it till I made it. So someone got my resume in front of a company, and they were like, this guy is going to change your company. And they're like, okay. And they faxed the resume, but they had it cut off, so they didn't know I didn't have any experience. And I literally went into a 7-interview process to get an executive sales position that I was not qualified for, selling picnic backpacks to Bloomingdale's and other companies. And then I ended up launching a collegiate licensing division with them. It was like my first entrepreneurial experience. And I fell in love. And then I recognized, to be successful in business, I had to really understand the Rubik's Cube. I was like, there's so many colors to business. How do I organize it? How do I flip it? And how do I make it all cohesive? And that's kind of where it started.
Picnic backpacks. That's truly where it started.
Picnic backpacks.
How long did you do that for?
I did that for about 2.5, 3 years. And what ended up happening was an entrepreneur talked to someone I know and said, if you had to start a business with anyone, who would it be? And it was my brother's best friend said, my best friend Matt Seigel's brother, Brandon Seigel. And he said, what? Why? How? He's like, there's something about him. He just has it. And so this entrepreneur said, look, I've got all these businesses. I need help. Can you come in and figure it out? And this was right before the big mortgage meltdown. And so he owned a subprime mortgage business. He owned a mortgage-backed security technology company. And he owned commercial real estate and all this stuff. And he's like, dude, you want to go on this journey with me? I'm like, yeah. And so I went on it. Literally learned everything from the ground up. He literally didn't teach me. He was like, I'm paying you to do what you do. He gave me a desk and he said, build my business. Like, that's basically what I did. And it started with this mortgage-backed security company, analyzer software company. And we built it, we grew it, everything. And I was helping in all different business. We had a like Pimp My Ride car company. We had all different things, but it was basically like literally like, Brandon, like, you just understand how to figure out a problem and solve it. And so then met my wife, who's an occupational therapist. And at the time she was going to school, but her mom was an occupational therapist and had a private practice. said, I really need someone I can trust. And at first I'm like, no, 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 no. And then she's like, why don't you spend a day with our executive team and see if you like it? And literally the day after I married my wife, I started working with my mother-in-law, and the rest is history. I just learned private practice through the ground up. I mean, I went to business school and I took business classes, but when people ask me, what was the most successful thing that contributed to your business acumen? It was actually learning how to direct theater. And people say, why and how? I said, because the whole idea of directing theater is you have to work on a budget and there's no margin. You have to get a bunch of people to put in work and get underpaid. You have to bring a story to life, and you have to make people feel that they got a valued experience for money that they could have spent in another way. And so to me, that's what taught me how to make business, because at the end of the day, we're delivering an outcome on behalf of a customer, and they have to feel that their investment in it was 10x it in that.
What was it about the executive team that drew you into the medical practice field, aside from your wife, obviously being a practitioner?
Well, my wife wasn't in it yet, but I think what ended up happening was I saw a problem I could solve. So when I originally got brought in, the executive director was like, I need someone to come and I need them to really just like figure out how to get us known. And so at that time, my business background was more from a marketing standpoint. And he basically was like, look, we've got everything in order. And so my first problem was get us big. And I literally went out, and we had a pediatric and an orthopedic clinic, and I went throughout greater Los Angeles, and I would go doctor's office to doctor's office. And I would ask them, like, what's your biggest problem? What's going on? Who do you refer to? Everything. And the first year, all I did was understand the market. I really understood what the heartbeat of the problem was. And so I just loved the executive's whole thing was, we don't know how to make this go right. To me, I love that challenge. That challenge is like, look, we know we've got a good product. We know we have a purpose. How do we make it go right? Well, then I ended up making the practice grow. But what happens when you build a house with no foundation?
It crumbles.
It crumbles. So then I recognized that there was a problem with the finance. There was a problem with the medical billing. There was a problem with the HR. And I had to fix every little thing, from independent contractor misclassifications. And I'm not taking all the credit. I was able to find the support I needed. And really, I say it this way. It's a combination of, I think I actually said this in podcasts, 70% is learning through solving, 30% is tapping into data that aligns with what you're doing.
Give us an example of one of those situations where you're solving based on the 70-30.
Okay. So I'm in there, and we have a problem. We are billing out the value of 7 figures of revenue, and we are not collecting the value of 7 figures of value.
Rough ballpark, you're billing for 7. What's
so
coming back?
From a standpoint of, we were billing, let's just give round numbers, $1.8 million of revenue being billed out that we should be collecting, and we were collecting around 1.25.
Okay.
So call it about a $500,000 discrepancy of where our collections were not coming in. Practice was not profitable. And so what I did was I just grew a bigger debt on the practice. So if you think about it, Brandon's going out marketing, get this, get that, got that insurance contract, all this stuff. Now we went from, I'm going to call it $975,000 to $1.75 million, but now we're losing more money. That's a problem to solve. So we were utilizing a medical billing agency, and we had a full-time medical biller, that manager, and we couldn't get it right. And this was prior to like technology being what it is.
Sure.
So we would actually have to mail out all of the claims. We could not, there's no electronic. So what I recognized was cash flow is a problem, all of that. And so as I drew the string of the problem, I was able to recognize that our first issue was technology. Our second issue was personnel. We had the wrong person in the job. We had a yes person. So the yes person is someone that always says, yep, got it. Yep, it's under control. And the day we figured out that we had the wrong person and the wrong billing agency was the fact that I opened a drawer of hers in the office, and I found a stack, hundreds of claims that had not been sent out. Hundreds.
How far back dated? I'm curious.
It was about 6 months of backlogs.
But that's like your whole job, isn't it?
It's your whole job. Well, that granted, if you said to me, what was the hardest, like I found in the first 7 years of working with my mother-in-law, it was finding all of the problems and all of that. And we got to a point where we had one administrative person for every practitioner, which is unheard
That's
of.
a lot.
Now we're 1 to 10, just so you can think with that. So that's where I'm learning of like, okay, what's the right ratio? What's my problem here? Is it, everyone thinks it's policies and procedures. You need policies and procedures. I'm like, you can have a million policies and procedures, but if you have no culture, no accountability, no knowledge of what it takes. So I actually, with the medical billing thing, I went and got certified as a medical biller. That's where I said, we've got a medical billing issue. We've got a workflow issue. Let's go get some knowledge. But I needed to know the problem I was trying to solve, is my point. And the same thing with HR. We had 80 independent contractors that I recognized we misclassified. 80. Okay. Now this was over 10 years ago, so I am no longer, but I had to recalibrate. And so we got rid of 80 independent contractors. And I actually tell people when I tell the story, I say, the most stressful thing I've ever done in business is tell 80 independent contractors that they no longer can be an independent contractor. And that's how I knew I was misclassifying them. They were irate, they were angry, they felt that I was stealing their livelihood from them, which defeats the whole classification of an independent contractor. So.
Okay, so they should have just been classified as employees? Why are we upset about becoming an employee over being an independent contractor?
Because they wrote off their house and they're this and they're that. And so when you're in the state of California and Uncle Sam's taking all your money, you found a loophole for you to get paid a higher dollar amount and not pay taxes.
Okay, got it. That makes perfect sense. Is a company filled with contractors?
Yeah, so we had 400 practitioners. 80 of those 400 were independent contractors. So one of the issues that I had to solve was we were working off a model that was 1 hour of work is better than 0 hours of work. So if you wanted to work 1 hour for me, that was okay. If you wanted to work 5 hours for me, that's okay.
Really inefficient.
Really inefficient. So we lost so much money because we didn't recognize the cost of management of personnel. And so that's where I say, like, granted, I go to data, but there's no data that often comes in. And that's part of the reason why I'm educating through the Private Practice Survival Guide podcast is I'd rather you learn the data from me than have to figure it out on the job.
After you've lost a lot of money, time. Yeah.
So it's all that alignment.
That's really, it's a lot to think about. Okay, so you started out selling picnic backpacks, and then you get into
like mortgage-backed securities.
Exactly.
And all that.
Then you're in like a whole thing of different types of businesses.
Yep.
And then you get into your mother-in-law's practice.
Mm-hmm.
How do we end up over here now at Wellness Works, your own?
Yeah. So to this day, I still run my mother-in-law's practice. That's the first thing.
Love it.
So it's a purpose. My wife and I co-create. My wife's the clinical director. I'm the executive director. I've averaged over 8 years of employment retention per employee. And I have employees that have been with me for over 20 years still within that practice. So that practice is truly my heart. And so I still do it till this day. Meanwhile, about 10 years ago, I recognized that other practices were like my mother-in-law. And they basically, the way that my mother-in-law started practice was this idea. She was like, hey, I've got this idea because they're shutting down what we do at the hospital and there's still a need. And she's like, I just want to give to the world. The problem with giving to the world is they didn't plan, didn't know. All they knew was the clinical side. And so I started working with practice owners that were similar to my mother-in-law. And slowly I recognized through coaching and consulting that people didn't just need advisement, they needed doing this. So part of Wellness Works Management Partners was crafted through the lens of, okay, you know what's wrong, you know what needs to get fixed, but you don't want to do it. Let me do it for you. And my first time ever doing this, like on a high level scale, was there was a practice owner in New Jersey that said, I think I want to sell. And I said, how do you know? She said, I don't know, I think I want to sell. I said, what if you could take a 1-year sabbatical and I'll run your whole practice for you? And you can take the entire year off and you'll know. She said, really? I said, absolutely. I'll fly out every month. I'll run your team remotely. I'll do everything you need to do. And we'll have check-ins so that every month you know what's going on, but you're not on site, you're not involved, you're not anything. And we did it. And about 6.5 to 7 months in, she said, I already know the answer. I'm ready to be done. And we found her a buyer. She exited. I helped that transition, and it was done. And then I recognized, okay, there's something here. And that's where the idea of building what I call a deconstructed management services organization to help people free up their time was the way we wanted to go.
That's amazing. How many years have you been doing Wellness Works now?
So altogether, I've been consulting and in this space now, I think, for 18 and a half years.
Okay.
And then Wellness Works Management Partners has taken several forms because as I've moved, I've started different entities. So legally, I think one of our entities is 5.5 years, but I've been doing this all together, supporting for over 18 years.
You're listening to this podcast, but behind the scenes, it's powered by our team at PS Creative Studios, the #1 podcast production studio in the US. We help turn big visions into polished shows. Head to psstudios.co to see how we can help you do the same.
Have you ever been faced with an obstacle where you were ready to just throw in the towel?
Yeah, well, very transparently, when I fixed the problem with the insurance problem with the clinic, I basically said, I'm done with insurance. We got rid of the clinic. I said, I'm done. I don't want to do it anymore. It's not worth it. And I took several years off from working with insurance. I was like, I'm done. I don't want to play this insurance model. I don't want to fight the insurance. And what ended up happening was helping a client that could not find a solution for medical billing. And that's what pushed me back into medical billing.
So what are a couple tips you can give people for medical billing so that they don't get that same burnout?
So the first thing is you have to understand it's a game. And it's kind of like the game of Risk. You have to identify what you're trying to dominate, what's worth it, because sometimes you pick the wrong country in Risk and you get all blown up. And that's the same thing with payer sources. So understand what you're getting into. So 15 years ago, I wasn't prepared to tackle Medicaid. Today, I'm actually identifying acquisition clinics in the Medicaid game. And so I think you got to understand the payers. You got to research. I think you have to start small, and you never have to double down where you should never have one payer make up more than 33% of your funding sources.
That's a good tip.
That is a good tip. All right. So the pillars of our show really are trying to understand a couple of things. Not necessarily all of them apply to each person that we chat with, but we want to understand faith, capitalism, the American dream, and freedom, and kind of how that applies in your life and the way that you operate and how you've been able to become a very successful human being, right?
Yeah.
So for you personally, what do you feel that the American dream is, and how do you see that in your day-to-day work with all of these different practices?
Yeah. So I was blessed to have two grandfathers that brought entrepreneurial spirit. So the American dream is real for me. My grandfather, on my mother's side, who was a major influence in my life, he actually, him and his father immigrated and they started painting homes in Boyle Heights. And his father ended up buying a paint factory, and my grandfather had to purchase it from him, and it literally made his ability to raise a family, support, buy properties, everything. So they came from nothing, had no money, etc. My other grandfather, again, in the wars, the whole bit, ended up being a lawyer, but ended up recognizing that there was a huge need for the entrepreneurial spirit. Him and his brothers actually started the first ever convertible sofa. The first ever sofa that turned into a bed came from the Seigel brothers, and literally Riviera sofa beds with Bob Hope as the spokesman for that.
What a spokesman.
I see the American dream from them. And then later, my grandfather was teaching business, and a student came to him and said, I have this idea for, right now, closets are only being built by handymen, and I want to create the first closet company. And my grandfather and him launched California Closets, and all my family members had the first ever franchises of California Closets and all of that. So the American dream to me is real because I saw nothing to something. I believe that right now in our world, we lose sight on control and freedom. And so even my children, I'm teaching them what the American dream is. And the American dream is to never be the effect of someone else. That's the American dream. At the end of the day, to have control over your future, what you do and how you do it and to love what you do. So I have a daughter that wants to do a cooking business. I have a son that has it. Like, they each have their projects. And part of it is, how do we make decisions that impact our sustainability in life?
I love that.
What are some of the most common myths or misconceptions about success in your industry that you can kind of break down or dismantle?
So I'm just gonna give you the one. The most common myth is that you can't prioritize profit and have a purpose. I believe that is the wrong thing. And so in my industry, people feel that if they prioritize profit, then they don't deserve to be a private practice owner. That healthcare, we shouldn't profit on healthcare. And for me, I disagree, because I say, hey, if The Rock can make $30 million on a film, why can't a doctor make $30 million to cure cancer? We need to prioritize profit, because all we got is our health. That's the number one way. So the idea that insurance companies can be profitable, but practitioners should not be profitable, I don't understand that. And so for me, the idea of freedom of health, I'm a big believer that by creating a free market, we're actually able to elevate the responsibility of what health represents in society.
So, of course, becoming successful, you've got failures and you've got triumphs. Can you talk to us about a big failure?
Yeah, I've had a lot of failure, to be honest.
Really? See, looking at you and knowing you, I would never think that.
I mean, very transparently, the clinic was a failure. We never really got it to its potential. I ended up knowing that cutting the loss of one of my clinics was better than trying to fix it. So for me, there was a point where I recognized I had more energy and more excitement for starting a new clinic than trying to fix the old. Sometimes something is beyond repair. So that was a failure, if you look at it. My mother-in-law would say that was a failure. To me, I see it as a triumph, because I cut the bleed and I built something better than ever. And sometimes it's like you want to build ground up in that way. So I would definitely qualify that as a failure. One of the failures that I've made is I've given too much trust to employees. And I've treated employees like friends, and I've lost sight on they're going to look out for the best interest. And so I've been burned. My mother-in-law had her best friend steal half her business from under her skin, took clients, built like the whole home health agency, and all contracts got stolen. Major failure, because didn't see a person at my wedding, literally to that day. And from their justification, I worked hard, I did this, but you got paid to build that, and to just go and took our employee handbooks, took our EMR that we're using, took all the relationships with the home health agencies, all that stuff. So you lost sight on who, what, and how you were working with. And I think sometimes we trust too easily, is what I'll say.
I've also fallen very, very prey to that myself. And it's one of those really painful things, but I don't want to then become somebody who now does not trust or does not, pour into people. And how do you balance it? So
I have this game in my head where I say Russian roulette. And I say, what's the best that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? And every action has to be okay if that worst action happens. So if tomorrow this person were to jump ship, I have to have no regrets. If tomorrow this person stole half my business, I have to feel okay. I had my eyes open, I was ready for it. I'm just more hesitant. But I think part of the reason why I do diversify is I never want someone to have control over my survival. I never want to feel like one person means too much to my business. That was one of the things I felt my mother-in-law did early on, is she gave the keys to her castle to everyone. And everyone loved her, but it was here you go, that's yours, and go have at it. And there is a point where an employee feels that they are responsible for that success, and then they want to take it from you. And I've been conscious of that as well.
Do you have any advice on how you can kind of intertwine it to where you can still give them some keys, but not everything, to where they feel like they're growing and they get that creativity and they get to build something, but at the end of the day, you don't feel like you gave them too much that they're going to run away with all your ideas?
So one of the things we did with my mother-in-law's practice that I think was probably our most successful action is 8 years ago, we started a profit sharing 401k. So we said, we're going to do a 401k. We're going to do it as a discretionary match. And we are going to contribute a portion of profit that is clear to that group. And we've actually done dollar to dollar match over 8 years. We've averaged 40% year over year.
That's
match
amazing.
as a result. And what that does is that aligns people from a vesting period. It aligns them with ownership. They recognize that they still get a seat at the table because they're getting some of that profit. They're not getting ownership. They're getting profit. And so it's much easier in that way. The other thing that I've recognized is I've allowed my employees to identify if they want to be an intrapreneur or an entrepreneur.
Can you differentiate the two for us?
Yep. So an intrapreneur is someone that builds something without risk. They're going to benefit from it. They're building something on my dime. So when I helped start that licensing division, I was an intrapreneur.
You were working within the business.
It was their product. I had no ownership over it. I built it. I got bonused off of it. I learned more. People every day say, that's over $10 million a year that you helped contribute to. You didn't see a dime of it. I go, no, I was an intrapreneur. I built on their dime, on their risk, etc. But what I got knowledge. I got knowledge I could never turn away from. I got incentivized. I got paid to learn. I got paid to grow. I got to create something with zero risk. And so I say it in the sense, they gave me a sandbox and they gave me all the tools and I got to dream and build. That is priceless. An entrepreneur is someone who is taking on risk. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, let's build it. I need to open a new clinic. You want to buy in? Let's build it. Let's do it. Let's have it be ours and let's make that happen. And so that idea of intrapreneur can be internal programs. Entrepreneur can be external programs that we share in expense, liability, and whatnot. The thing people don't recognize is that they always think you make more than you do.
I know. I absolutely know that first freaking hand. I'm like, you have no idea how expensive it is to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, and even so, I say it this way, and I don't mean it in a mean way. Like, I've been blessed that my business is growing, but sometimes I feel like my business is growing, and all that means is I'm paying more to the Uncle Sam.
And to
so
employees.
I'm like, my bank account doesn't look better, even though they're like, oh my God, you made all this. Like, my CPA is like, dude, you're killing it. I'm like, where
did it go?
Like,
show me where.
And so sometimes, and obviously you need the right tax planning strategies and all that, but
yeah,
sometimes we don't recognize that things just cost money. And I always say, if your game is to just make money, there's better ways to make money than entrepreneurship.
I could not agree more.
And so you have to enjoy that game. And if you took money out of the equation, I'd still do what I do. And that's what people don't I tell my kids, I'm like, if you can find something that you want to do 60 hours a week, then you've made your dream. The American dream is true when you love it that much.
So on my side of this, it's interesting. I have a friend who graduated college and got a normal job. And then I graduated college, started a business. So we've been in the workforce the same amount of time. And we compared year over year. And she's the only person I would do it because we're very close. And she's made more money over the course of her working, and she had to work her way up. She was in publishing, well, the news rather, so media, which they start very, very low, right? Well, I started very, very low because I'm starting with nothing. I'm just like a hope, prayer, and a wish to figure this out, which I, of course, did. But it's funny because looking at me when we'd be out in our 20s, everybody's like, oh, Layla's the most successful person. All my friends were like, you're the coolest human being. Like Hillary Clinton's a client and all these crazy things. And I was like, you guys have no idea though. Like it's draining. I'm working nonstop. I'm working 7 days a week. Every time I hire a new person to work with me, it either really blossoms or they end up moving away or they end up doing something and stabbing me in the back. But 15 years of being in business now, we compared who's made more money, and she definitely has. I'm like, so we have to kind of stop glamorizing, in my opinion, the entrepreneurial journey. I think it is definitely for some, but it is not for everybody. But it's really okay if it's not for you, because you can be an incredible asset to society. You can be incredibly happy by being able to have that entrepreneurial part where you're helping uplift a team of people
Yeah.
And you don't have to take on the risk. You don't have to take on that stress. Like, there's something really beautiful about that.
I also think there's a difference between, and I mean no disrespect,
Yeah.
but an entrepreneur that's a business owner and an entrepreneur that created a job for themselves.
Yeah.
And so I don't think people understand that the entrepreneur that creates a job for themselves, they are making more than they were as an employee. But the entrepreneur that has employees often is not making the amount of money. And it's interesting because I had an employee that had been with me for over 16 years. And she was very entitled. I'll just say it that way. And I said, do you know how much? She's like, I've given 16 years. And I go, yeah. Do you know how much I've given? She's like, what do you mean? I go, how much do you think I've spent for you to be part of this organization? And she's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm underpaid in the industry. I go, $1.3 million. $1.3 million I've spent. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but like, as a business owner, we put into context how much we spend, how much we make, all these different things. As an employee, all we see is what's left over in our bank account. We don't look at what we got, we look at what we have left or what we get to spend. And so the mindset is hard because we're attacking it from two different things. And it's interesting because I had a business owner recently come out and they say, look, for 4 years, I haven't taken any draws and I've been making really bad money. And we're finally making really good money and I want to buy a new car. But I am afraid what that's going to communicate to my staff if I roll up in a brand new Mercedes. And I'm like, own your space. You have the right. Anyone, and so my viewpoint is, as a business owner, we need to instill accountability that it is just as important that you make money as I make money. The day I stop making money,
You don't have a job.
Right.
It's the day you don't have a job, 100%. I'm like, the success and failure of our company depends on all of us.
Yep.
If I have someone who is a producer who is doing the worst job, forgetting to turn on cameras, doesn't have this mic, we're losing business. And that can be directly related to the fact that you didn't do your job in the way that you were trained to do it. And now everyone is going to take that hit. So it's a team sport.
100%.
It is absolutely a team sport. And you should tell that business owner, buy the new car, make sure it's over 6,000 pounds, write that thing off.
$1,000,000%.
That's how you buy the new
Yeah,
car. I made the
exactly.
mistake up until this year of buying cars under that weight limit. And it was not until we had a client who was really good at taxes sitting there just grilling people on all the tax mistakes people make. And she mentioned that in one of her episodes. And I was like, what? I could have just bought a heavier version of my same SUV and written the whole thing off. I was so sad that I did not know that before.
It's so funny. So our clinic used to be in North Hollywood, and one of the tenants in the building was this medical assistant education. They teach people how to become medical assistants. And there were these three women, mom and two daughters, and every 3 years they'd come in like a G-Wagon or this or that brand new. And I'm like, I'm in the wrong business. Or like, no, we just know how to tax plan. That's what it's like,
And you're like, you sure do.
yeah, exactly.
100%. My dad goes, you should get the really fancy one. My dad is a silly Persian accent. The Gwagon, that's what we call them, G-Wagon.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's a bit excessive. I've heard that they're not even that fun to drive. But he's like, but tax-wise, it should be cool. It's like, thank you, Dad.
James.
Yeah,
It's like, I'm going to go the less expensive route. But we are going to wrap this up with you. We have a question, and we're doing this with all of our guests where they don't know who that person in the next hot seat will be. It is a random question. You get
Okay.
to watch it on the iPad.
I'm up for the challenge.
All right, the volume's all the way up on that.
Okay.
What is the one thing that you've had a burning desire to execute on and have procrastinated doing it?
So the question is, what is the one thing that you have a burning desire to do that you have not executed?
That you've been
on,
procrastinating
that I've
with.
been procrastinating. So I would say the one thing that I have been burning to do that I have been procrastinating is opening up another pediatric therapy company in Florida.
Why are we procrastinating?
Because I'm waiting for my bottom line to reach a certain level. Like it comes down to like, I'm kind of like either all my stars have to align or I feel like the universe has to talk to me. Like I feel like I don't want to rush it. And so for me, I'm very much like energy
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
I keep looking, I keep waiting. I'm like, it's not presenting itself yet. So I'm procrastinating because I need a sign.
I get that. I think that's smart. You know yourself better than anybody.
Yeah.
Okay, final
And then
question.
Our final question. We ask everybody this, and this is how we end it every week.
Okay.
What does freedom mean to you?
So freedom to me is the ability to choose, live, and sustain the life that you've always dreamed of.
Are you living that now?
I am.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for Brandon Seigel. You can catch him on the Private Practice Survival Guide every single week, streaming on every possible podcast platform ever. Please go subscribe on YouTube. We would love that. And then if you would like to work with Brandon, Wellness Works Management.
Partners, yeah. Brandon at wellnessworksmp.com. You can literally email me, and I do reach out. I am very responsive and would love to talk.
Love it. There's probably nobody better in this business than you to do it. I learn something every time I watch your stuff. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.